Hi and welcome back to Garden Ninja for the February garden tour. Now usually we start off outside, but today I'm at home at the drawing board and I want to kind of address the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19. And here in the UK we've been living with the effects of lockdowns and changes in civil liberties and freedoms for about a year now, and it's really starting to take its toll. I know I, for one, have really struggled the past few weeks as we come up to that 1 year anniversary. It feels like my mind some days gets put into a blender, shaken around, and then I'm trying to sort of pour it out onto the desk and reassemble it so I can get back to work. And I want to acknowledge that because I think a lot of people are struggling. And if you're one of those people, I want to offer some hope and some help to you in that you've got the entire Garden Ninja army on call to help you. So make sure you shout it out. You know, we've got your back. And if that's going out into the garden and trying to fix garden drama, or just using any one of the Garden Ninja social media channels to say that you're feeling a bit naff and you could do with a bit of help. And I'm sure that the army of ninjas will come to your aid and you can help share experiences, tips, gardening tricks, and that should help get you over some of those little bumps. But it's certainly not easy. But make sure that you use my channel here to help yourself as much as you can. So this month I've planned some really cathartic, frustration venting tasks that we're going to do in the garden that will help you get out some of those demons and hopefully make yourselves feel a bit better. So grab a warm jacket, come on, let's get cracking. So February is the perfect month to start cutting back your herbaceous perennials if you haven't already done so. Now behind me is the prairie border that I planted probably about 2 years ago now. And I leave it throughout the entire winter because you've got these gorgeous grasses that just keep this beautiful kind of misty look to the border. But now in February it's time to get out my Japanese scythe, which is this really sharp instrument here, and hack them back down to the ground. Because if I leave it any longer, the new growth is going to start to emerge and they'll start to look really tatty. So I'm going to take this, hack all of these back, and then compost the remains. So with ornamental grasses, these scythes really do save you time, because whilst I can prune this with a prosecateurs, it's going to take a lot longer. Have a look at this, this is how fast it is. So I tend to grab the grass at the base, scythe in hand, half of it's gone, and you can be really brutal. Then you can use the scythe to also grab all this grass and then compost it. Now don't worry if your gardens are starting to look a little bit bare at this time of year. It's perfectly normal, but you do need to make sure that you cut back your herbaceous perennials to make way for new growth. If you're worried about gaps, maybe plan adding some evergreen shrubs and other structures to take the space between the February chop and the regrowth at the end of March. So I've finished cutting back all the grasses and I've used sharp prosecateurs to snip back any dry and crispy herbaceous perennials. But with things like this luzula, or some of the kind of quasi-evergreen grasses, you may notice that there's a mix of brown and crispy and beautiful green growth. And for that, I take a sharp pair of snips and I just cut out the brown and crispy material. I don't want to cut back into that evergreen material, just the stuff that's been and gone. And it is a little bit more detailed, a bit more labour of love. But the plants will look far nicer because of it, and it saves them having to put in loads of effort to regrow all of this, because if I just hacked it back it would take a lot longer. Once you've started to tidy up your herbaceous perennials, you're probably going to be really surprised at the amount of growth and life bursting up from the borders that previously wasn't seen. So keep your eyes open and see what's waking up in your garden. So now that the weather has finally warmed up a bit, I'm going to do one of my favourite activities, which is to plant a bare root rose. Now, I did a guide about a year ago on how you can do this, and I'm going to just show you again today because a few of you have been asking questions about roses, and they're a prime example for bare root. So down here, I've got this beautiful sweet honey rose. It's a bare root, and you can tell because it looks like, well, a bit of an alien. It's just a root stock with a few stumps of green rose material on the top, and it's been grafted. Now, the benefit for planting them bare root is that they're really easy to transport, they're more cost effective than container grown, and also you get a head start with your roses. It's far easier to get these going than it is for, say, a container rose in the middle of summer. So this is called Sweet Honey. It's going to have a beautiful pink flower, and it's a shrub rose. So it's going to grow pretty much like a shrub. It's going to grow probably to about 80 centimetres tall and wide, and it will be prolifically covered in flowers. So it's not going to be huge, but it's going to pack a real punch. So I'm just going to show you how to plant that now. But before then, I need to go and get some of my homemade compost. So let's go to the compost bin. So this compost bin here is nearly finished, but this is still good stuff from last year. Ignore the leaves, we had a terrible storm, it's just blown stuff everywhere. But if you can see there, this, hello Barry, is the finished product, the beautiful homemade compost. Now you can sieve that if you want it finer, but I'm going to use it as it is, and I'll show you in a minute why. Watch out. So the first thing I'm going to do is just loosen up the planting hole here. So you can see this soil is quite nice, it's already quite light. It's a bit damp because it has been wet, so it's perfect for planting bare root. So it doesn't need to be hugely deep. I only want to basically cover this section of the rose. So now that my bare root rose is in, I've made sure it's level and the graft's been covered, I'm going to now use compost to top dress or mulch around the bare root rose. Now, in my previous videos I always say don't bother adding compost to your planting holes for nearly 99% of all plants because you just don't need it. However, roses and a few other hungry plants and shrubs are the exception. So with this rose, it's going to need lots of food to get going this year. So it's a bare root, it's ready to go, but it's going to be really hungry. So I've got my homemade compost, and before I said I don't bother sieving it, and that's because for a mulch, you don't really need fine compost. But if you're going to be using it for things like potting on seedlings or really delicate specimens, you can mulch it using a sieve, and what that will do is it will just take out any bits of twig, any weed roots that might be lurking. But for this purpose, to save myself time and a bit of drama, I'm just going to use a compost as a rough and ready mulch, and I'll then mulch this again next September, and I'll probably mulch it twice a year for the rest of its life just to make sure that it's got enough nutrients and moisture to really bloom. Now is the perfect time to get out into the garden, grab your sharp secateurs and take out some of your frustrations by pruning roses. And if you're unsure how to do this, I've got a really good beginner's guide on my YouTube channel, so there's no excuse, get them pruned! So you may remember last month we were having snowdrop drama, and a number of you were saying that you were worried that your snowdrops hadn't come out, and I was the same. But if we look down here, so you'll see in my very mossy grass that the snowdrops that I planted in the green last year have started to come up. And I'm really pleased because it means that next year they'll come back even stronger. It's just about having a bit of patience and letting Mother Nature do her thing. Now, we had a really bonkers storm about a week ago, and one of the poor victims has been this oleaginous standard that's blown over in her pot and is now lying desolate and damaged on the floor. But I've got a plan. I've got some really strong Gorilla Glue, and I've glued a pot in the past that survived, so I'm going to try the same with this because I really don't want to lose this pot or this standard. It's done so well, but unfortunately due to freak weather it's been knocked over. I'm going to give it a whirl and let's see what happens. Now, I've had to snip away a damaged branch back to there, which is a shame because it exposes a bit of a void in the shape, and the same here. But if I hadn't have taken them out, which are over here, all that will happen with damage like that is it will just get infected, that will tear off, and it will leave a right mess. So you're better off just taking it back to the next bud or lateral, as I say in all my videos, and look, even that's been rubbed as it's hit the floor. So better off than on. And that brings us to the end of the February tour. And hopefully some of the activities that we've gone through in this guide will help you vent some of that frustration and also make your gardens look awesome this year. If you've liked this video, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, visit my other social media accounts, and you can see all sorts of behind the scenes. And like I said earlier on in the video, if you're struggling, make sure you call it out, because we've got an army of garden ninjas that have got enthusiastic can-do attitudes that'll be there to try and help you get over those little mood bumps and lift you up. Anyway, I've been Garden Ninja. Many thanks for watching. Happy gardening.